Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Two-Player Activism, the show where we talk about the cool things people are doing to help their community and what we can do to help. And we do it all while playing some awesome video games. Before we get started, I want to issue a content warning. Today we will be playing a game rated M for gore and language. So if you're a child, I recommend you go watch something wholesome instead. Like go watch Jake Paul play Fortnite with Riley Reid or something. Because nothing helps a child's growth like the celebration of gratuitous wealth and the over-sexualization of women. There. Now that the kiddos are gone. My name is Eric Hart, and today I will be interviewing the brilliant Aaron Rinehimer. Aaron is a former volunteer with the group Wolfpack, an organization that aims to eliminate the influence of money in politics. If Wolfpack sounds like a group that you would like to learn more about, great. I will put their info in the video description to show you how to get involved. But today, Aaron and I will be discussing how to pass any law on a state level, and discuss some tips on how to have the biggest impact on your state government. And we will do it while Aaron experiences Bioshock for the first time, and tries to kill his first Big Daddy. So, let's dive in.
That's disconcerting. Assuming I should go forward. Okay. Looks like we're getting close to the stairs here.
Let's say that a state legislator recently got elected, and they ran on, hey, I'm going to fix your state roads. The road quality is terrible, and that's my main agenda. How do you convince them to invest their time into something that wasn't a priority for them initially?
I think the way I would go about it is to try to show them, statistical data that shows that while the specific issue that they're really working hard on, it the whatever whatever fight you're trying to get them to pick up with you, I would show statistical data showing that that's a popular issue among their constituents.
So
That
you're appealing to their desire to get reelected. Do that research to prove that it's a popular issue, and
Yeah.
convince them on the means of, hey, this is worth your time because of how it's going to help you in future polls and future elections. And what would you say to someone who, like, maybe this is a relatively new issue, maybe the research hasn't been totally vetted on it, and they don't necessarily have those statistics to back up that policy they're trying to introduce?
Yeah. Well, that's tough, and you can also try to make emotional appeals to that politician. Let's say, uh, I would say if they're a good politician, some politicians I've had experience with, they're not great and they're not particularly involved and care about their communities, and then it's really difficult, obviously. But if they're really involved in the community, then they would care, they would want to know. And if you can organize enough volunteers and grassroots people to lobby that same issue and call in, and write letters, not just those things, but also like go to coffee hours and meet with them and say, hey, I'm really interested in this thing. They're going to pick up that a bunch of people at their meet and greets and a bunch of people calling their offices are very interested in this specific issue. And I think they're going to take note that that's a popular thing, that if they do it, they're most likely it's going to be popular within their community. Yes, I want it. Dude, there. Whale.
How do you identify a good politician? How do you identify someone who's going to be willing to hear arguments like this?
Um, well, it's difficult to just identify them just by doing research. I think, you'll quickly discover after interacting with them. My current state senator is actually very, very receptive to um, interacting with her constituents. Before the pandemic started, she had regular coffee hours that you could go. She would give you legislative updates as to what she's trying to implement, what she's fighting for, and what's currently going on in the state legislature. And then she would open the floor up and let you ask any question you want. Why is the sky blue, or what's your favorite color? She would, any question.
So let's say you do identify that you have one of those legislators that falls in the category of not super responsive to their constituents. Is that the end of the road, or do you have more recourse?
Um, the it depends on a couple of factors. Sometimes that they can sometimes you can use a sticks and carrots method where, if you can illustrate to them through a canvassing campaign where you get a to bunch of constituents to show that there's significant care about an issue, through a letter writing campaign, through getting a whole bunch of constituents to lobby and flood their office. You can show, hey, this is something that your district really cares about. And then once you've shown that to that individual, then you can more or less you can say, hey, this could be something that's going to really help you. Or if you choose to fight this, then there'll be an election coming up that you may or may not, we may or may not support another individual that is supportive of this measure that's, within your district.
What would you say to someone who says, "Hey, this sounds like it's impossible. Sounds like there's a million bureaucratic roadblocks in the way to get any kind of change passed. The government's dumb and the government's corrupt. Like this is a waste of my time." What would you say to someone who thinks it's impossible to get any legislation passed?
Well, the first thing I would say is anything worth doing is difficult. Um, and if it, I wouldn't disagree that it's extremely difficult to get legislation passed, and to get your change implemented. Um, but what I would also say is, if it's completely impossible, then our country would still be run the same way it was run in 1776. So uh, change does happen, and if you if you keep fighting and keep fighting and keep showing up in our form of government, it eventually, that always equates to winning.
All right, this will let you size up your opponent here. Get a nice little preview.
Oh, Jesus.
So let's say I'm an individual who wants to get legislation passed or an organization. What advice would you give to them?
Just because your priority is not in line traditionally with the priority of a state legislator, like for instance, let's say you're a Republican and the state legislator's majority Democrat, and you want to try to get your your legislation implemented. Well, if you approach that state legislator um, and frame your position from their ideological point of view, they're going to be much more open to it, and they're going to think about it. Um, and they're going now. Every legislator I've interacted with, even if they were, even if they agree with me from an ideological point of view, they're still going to ask. They're still going to push back and ask questions about the legislation because they don't want to be associated with something that's ridiculous and voodoo, and craziness, because they don't want that on their record as they're pushing that kind of a craziness.
Right.
Um, the other thing I would say is, the other thing I would say is, um, don't underestimate the effects that grassroots support can be. So, if you have this committee hearing and this big, um, this big, corporate interest or uh, special interest uh, representation comes into your committee hearing, sounding all professional, that's one person. But if you can gather a group of 50 individuals, 100 individuals, which is a lot of people, to come in and show, hey, there's massive amount of support for this, it's going to be very, very difficult for legislators to um, reject that this is not something that's valuable to your community. Um, the final thing I would say is to build relationships with legislators. So if you just walk into their office and start demanding X, Y, and Z, they're not gonna respond to that very well. But if you kind of, you know, uh, you kind of come in and say, hey, I really like what you're doing on X piece of legislation. They're gonna notice, oh, this person's following what I'm doing, and they care. And you meet with them a couple of times. You hear them out as far as what they're doing and everything. Um, Maybe you come into their office and give them a couple of cookies or some home baked cookies, and the office can share and everything. They're gonna say, "Oh, this is an ally of mine. These individuals are they're have my interest at heart, and not maybe not interest at heart, but these people are not enemies." And so they won't go into a meeting with their shields up, so to speak, if you're a Star Trek fan. Um, and they may hear you out a little bit more, um, when it comes to what legislation you're looking for. Never give up. Don't accept no as an answer. Uh, uh, oh, geez.
Here he is.
How do you?
Hmm. Good first effort.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
There you go. You did it.
Huh. Those guys can be tough.
Yeah, they do a lot of damage. Pretty vicious if you're not careful. Get your loot. There you go, man.
Cool.
Mission statement complete. Nice job.